Hello, here I am again, Wolfgang Herbert from the University of Tokushima, and here is the second part of my lecture on Japanese tattooing. And yes, I will want to sum up once more why the image of Japanese in Japan concerning tattoos is very bad and is not favorably viewed by the population. The reasons are, as we saw, the tattoos as a punishment. That was actually introduced from China, is mentioned in the oldest mythological compilations, Kojiki and Nihonshoki, but it was abolished actually in the 7th century in the context of big reforms called the Taika reforms. It is mentioned again in the Joe Codex in the 13th century as a punishment, and we don't know much after that. It faded away possibly, but it was reinstituted actually at the beginning of the Edo time, that means in 1670, and it was again reinstituted by Yoshimune in 1720. And abolished after the Meiji reform in the end of the 19th century and prohibited as such. And the criminal tattoo, or the punishment capital as a corporal punishment, you can see here. And these are different regional differences. Here is Osaka, Kyoto, Kishu. These are old names of different regions, and you can see that usually it was on the upper arm and in form of lines. And here you got another few regional variations, and here you have got a tattoo that is going onto the forehead. And here in this case, if you're a civilist, so if you commit crimes twice, thrice, or 4 times, the line here transforms into the character of Inu, which means dog. There were also cases where more elaborate kanji were tattooed on the forehead, like the character for Aku, which means bad. So this, of course, didn't give the branding of people a good image. There's one more thing that has to be, and I forgot to mention it, is that there is a Confucian notion that says that the body that you received from your parents is a gift and should be kept intact in its whole integrity, which means that tattoos, which are kind of were seen as a kind of defilement. I have a little poem here that I wanted to quote, and I'm now desperately looking for it. As you can see, there is, in the 18th century, you find satirical haiku-like poems which are called senryu, and one of these senryu goes like this: Horimono wo suru ga fukou no hajimenai, which means with tattooing it all begins in piety to one's parents. So this is this ethical concept that says that the body belongs to one's parents, and tattooing is, and any kind of body modification is against piety. And I showed you these magazines. These are Japanese magazines. Again, taste is or beauty is in the eye of the beholder, but what you can see here is contemporary young tattooists who are introduced. And what you also can see is that tattooing is very often is heavily connected with other body modification methods, particularly with piercing. And even piercing a generation ago, here in Japan, when I came here 30 years ago, many young ladies who had earrings didn't have their ears pierced. And when I asked them why, they said their parents wouldn't like it. This has changed completely. Now the young girls, they all have their ears and other parts pierced. And there is no resistance against that anymore. So maybe in one generation the same thing might happen with tattoos, and it will get a different image. I mean, at least, as we saw, that it's not only public baths, it is hot springs, it's even gyms and pools and beaches. You cannot go there and sport a tattoo. This is a very far-reaching penalizing of these things. And as I said, the Olympics coming up, there is a discussion how to deal with these prohibitions, and maybe they will be lifted, or at least there will be made some exceptions for the foreign visitors. We will see. And I talked about that case court, the young tattooist in Osaka called Masuda Taiki, and the ruling was that tattooing is not a medical procedure, therefore it can be done as a regular craft. However, I heard that a few colleagues of him were pretty angry about this whole procedure, because they alleged that he was nabbed not because of the act of tattooing, but because he bought some anesthetics, painkillers and stuff, which is not anesthesia. Yeah, and this is a problem and gets in conflict with the medical law and medical practice. And Masuda actually says that he went to court not only because of the tattooing, but because of the importance of individual liberty and diversity of thought and behavior, and any kind of repression in this direction is not good. And tattooing is first of all an art, and second a form of self-expression, and should be allowed. So he made a bigger case out of it, and he has a point in there, I would say. So tolerance against tattoos would be really good if that would be bigger here in Japan. And I think that the intolerance that is rampant is due to ignorance. So the prejudice that it's only the Yakuza who spot tattoos is not historically correct, and of course even in present times not correct. Even the Yakuza themselves, we know that out of police data over the years, over decades, it can be shown that only around 60 to 70% of the Yakuza actually were tattooed. So it is not necessarily an act that every Yakuza commits when he becomes a gangster. Even the third boss of the Yamaguchi-gumi, a very eminent, prominent and famous Yakuza, Taoka Kazuo, it was said that hara ga kirei, which means his skin is beautiful, that means it was not contaminated by any tattoos. So even these big Yakuza have had no tattoos, and nowadays, of course, it is a matter of money. And in former times, the oyaji, the kumicho or the boss, he sent his underlings to the tattooist and paid for it. And now it's the Yakuza, the young Yakuza or recruits, who have to pay by themselves and out of their pockets, and unfortunately these pockets are empty. And actually the clientele of tattooists has changed very much, and there are many more normal citizens who go there just because they like tattoo, or they wanted to have it as a fashion statement. And even among the Yakuza, it's only those who really like tattoos and want a tattoo for themselves, not because they are a Yakuza. So this prejudice is not correct, and should be through literature and other, or venues corrected. Well, the problem is, of course, that the association between tattoos and criminals is not restricted to Japan. We have in America a rampant or a very lively prison tattoo scene. All this grey work comes from there. We have prison tattoos in Russia as well, and these are very intricate iconographies which tell stories about these people, about how they, about their crimes, where they have been in prison, and so on and so forth. And if you can decode that, you can see at the moment, at one glance, what kind of person it is. And in Europe as well, there was in the 19th century a Italian so-called criminologist, Cesare Lombroso, who published a book 1876 called L'uomo delinquente, and so the delinquent. And nowadays this serves as an example of bad methodology, no control groups and stuff. So he went to prisons and investigated, and actually at the time, he was a phrenologist as well, so he measured all the body and stuff, and he said, well, he claimed that the criminals were of an atavistic character and loved tattoos, and this image of tattoos and criminals has been diffused as well in Europe. If you go back into the history and into the bigger context of tattooing, it has to be said that body decorations, be it with needles or otherwise, are as old as humanity, and the oldest tattoos we know of are coming from a mummified hunter who was found in the Alps between Italy and Austria. He was nicknamed Ötzi, and he had 61 tattoos on his body, and these were lines and points and all kind of things, and they match certain so-called meridians or vital points that are used in acupuncture, and it is suspected that these tattoos were of therapeutic meaning. And of course tattooing has always had this also a kind of religious or spiritual aspect, and the decorative aspect as well. There are mummies in Egypt almost as old as Ötzi who had tattoos, and so it is a very, very old thing. And in Japan it goes as far back as 3000 before our era, Jomon Jidai. And so in Europe, actually, the thing was that with Christianity, tattoos became a different image, because in the Bible there is, in Leviticus, a passage where it says that you shouldn't do any cuttings or markings in your body. So it was deemed to be taboo. Although the Egyptian Copts had very intricate Christian tattoos, it's a tradition they uphold until now. The Romans, Romans of antiquity, didn't see tattoos as aesthetic, but soldiers like to get tattoos, and they actually met tattooed tribes like the so-called Picti, which is a pictogram, picture, it's Latin, in Great Britain, who were heavily tattooed, but from the 5th century onwards, or 4th century onwards, when Christianity became the general religious confession in Europe, tattoos actually went away, and there is no tradition until, well, there were some seafarers later who got their initials tattooed on their skins, because if they drowned, one would know who they are. And until the 18th century, tattooing was not very well known in Europe. It was, as you might know, James Cook who actually brought the knowledge about tattoos and the word for tattoo to Europe in 1774, and he wrote the journal, and the word tatau or tatau tat is an onomatopoetic. It refers to the sound that it made when you put ink under the skin, because in Polynesia, where he saw these tattoos, they actually used little hammers and in order to tattoo. It's the most painful procedure I heard. I saw it at a tattoo convention, and one of his captains, Fourneau, he brought a heavily tattooed prince. His name was Omai, to Europe, and he was shown around at court and all kind of places, and he was quite kind of the personification of the noble savage, and tattooing became a real fashion among the sailors, and well, until the end of the 19th century it was not very common, but then all of a sudden full body tattooed people, particularly women, were shown around in circuses, on fun fairs, and they were an attraction. And when in the beginning of the 20th century, 1901, O'Reilly in New York, he invented the tattoo machine. Tattooing became very easy, and it could be done very quickly, and it became a big fad. And as you know, after the Second World War, it was the rockers, the hippies, and the punk musicians, and kind of subcultural, contra-cultural scenes that loved tattoos. And from there, it slowly but steadily diffused into mainstream. So nowadays, in Germany or in other European countries, 1 in 4 or even 1 in 3 of the young people have a little tat somewhere. So it is a very common thing, and therefore there is no resistance against this kind of body art. And as I said, maybe if you're lucky, things will change into this direction in Japan as well. Now, of course, due to globalization, internet and all kind of things, Japanese tattooing is very well known in the West and is highly esteemed and imitated. Yeah? And maybe we shall have a short look again on the aesthetics of Japanese tattoos once more. I will show you a few pieces done by Horitsune II, who is the Horishi I personally knew. He started to tattoo in his 20s and in Osaka, had a long period of apprenticeship, and as most of the Horishi will tell you, that they started learning the trade, being a client and getting tattooed themselves and watching the master, and then declaring how much they like it and if they can become a pupil. And yes, now we have a look at a few of his tats here. I hope you can see that. Yeah. And I will make some comments. You see here are the outlines. Yeah, many tattooists do the outlines with machine and the rest with hand. And here is a canon. So the motives, you know, is always a consultation between the tattooist and the client, what they want. This is a canon or Avalokiteshvara, so a Buddhist figure of wisdom and compassion. So maybe this person wants these kind of character traits for themselves. These are two yin and yang. One goes up, one goes down. Dragon, one has the mouth open, one has it closed. And it's the same. Here is a Suikoden hero, so maybe he wants to be as brave and as strong as he is. And again, I told you last time, the figure that is tattooed again. Here is his masterpiece, a full bodysuit, and this lady actually got it into his body within 8 months, which is a record. My Horitsune said a full bodysuit can take years, and Horitsune even joked that maybe 10 years, it might, in case of Yakuza, because they get in and out of prison, it can take 10 years or longer. And here we have a black dragon on the back of Miyazo. This is one of Horitsune's students, who is now a renowned tattooist himself. He was on the cover of the magazine that I showed you at the beginning. So here is this black dragon. Here is a Suikoden hero. Here is the lady again with the bodysuit. This is the cannon on the dragon, Kiryu cannon. And here is a lady, a Yakuza lady with a big dragon. This is again a cannon. Here the feet. If you look properly, you can see that the little finger is missing here. And this is actually a Yakuza. So next one, again feet. Tigers on both feet, and koi. This is a full body as well. This was the oldest client of Horitsune. These are Shisa, Chinese lions, and he always wanted the tattoo, but he was a proper company man and couldn't afford to get it, and so when he got retired, he was over 60 when he came, he got this wonderful tattoo. And this is how, here you can see the process. So the arms are already done, but on the back you see the outlines. This is the first thing that you do, and then come the shadowing, and then come the colors. Here you got it. So in this case we can see that, you see here, it is outline and shadowing. The bokashi, chiaroscuro, is in, and here, this is the last step, you get the colors. And if you look here, this peonia is under this wave. This is a very difficult way to tattoo. It's called kakushibori, and it shows that Horitsune really is a craftsman with the highest skills possible. This is the lady with the cannon on the dragon again. This is Kintaro. This is a motive. It is climbing up, fighting with the carp. Carps are very popular. They stand for longevity, for perseverance, and there is a mythological story where carps go up a waterfall and turn into dragons. So here are some Yakuza with Suikoden motifs, and here is a Dainichi Nyorai, a Vairochana Buddha. So religious motifs are quite popular as well. So that was it. And as you see, I perceive tattoos first of all as art, and doesn't matter if the canvas is the skin. So if you look at the pictures as such, you can see that they are really very nicely done. These are tattoos made by Miyazo, and he is a very good and skilled craftsman, as you see. Horitsune, I always said that there are some people here in Japan who in traditional art, and they are considered to be living treasures, and it's called Ningen Kokuho. And I said, you should be one of these living treasures. And he said, no, well, first, I'm not an artist, I'm just a craftsman. Typical Japanese humility. And second, the people who decide upon that, and the bureaucrats, they would never do, would never recognize that in case of tattoos. Here is the dragon again, and here is Horitsune-san. This is a review of the book I wrote about. So, I talked about anesthesia. So we come to the two other practical things: price and pain. Yeah, price is, well, the tourists are paid by hour, and I think that the market price would be around 1,500 yen. That is 150,000 yen per hour. 100 and what is it, $60 or something. But it depends, yeah. And usually one session is around, yeah, let's say between 2 and 5 hours. 5 hours is pretty long. After 3 hours, you inwardly start to curse the tattooist and say, please stop. And because the part of the place that was worked on has to heal, you can go to the tattooist maybe once, if different parts are worked on, twice a week or something. And I mean, the needles go under the skin. It bleeds very little. And there were people who showed me the tattoo, Westerners, and said, oh yes, I have to go to my tattooist again to get it a boost in the colors. And I thought, that is not possible. This is bad, botchy work, you know. Tattoo colors in Japan, if they're applied correctly, yeah, are not really fading away. So Horitsune as well said that if the time you have got it in, let's say this is 100%, and after 30-40 years there's still 80% is left. The lines might blur a bit, but he said this is also a kind of special quality of all the tattoos and makes their beauty. There are tattooists who claim that the hand done by hand, the colors get more beautiful with age, and the colors done with machine are fading a little bit, but they shouldn't fade out. And yes, so the pain, well, it is a burning sensation you get used to, and because mentally you can adjust to that, and it's absolutely okay. There are certain parts of the body, tattooists tell me, that are utterly painful. Everything that is close to bones, that is on the ribs, on the spine. The most painful places, I was told, are the coccyx and behind the knees, and fleshy parts where usually the fashion tattoos go in, on the arms or on the shoulders, are not that bad. Everywhere where you can try it out yourself, you have a lot of nerves, it gets rather painful. So in Osaka they call the tattoos gaman, which means endurance or perseverance. And whole body tattoo bearers are of course proud that they went through all this torture. And yes, as I said, there are people in the West who nowadays work in Japanese style and do very good work. You can maybe see a few here. So there are influences going to and fro. So these are tattooists in, I think in California, who work, these are German, Philipp Herberstein and Andre Müller, who work Japanese style. So tattooists from, these are all Westerners, Luke Atkinson and Jack Mosher, doing Japanese style. So Japanese tattooists are of course invited to international conventions and can show their craft there. And on the other hand, there are foreigners who come to Japan to study tattooing. And the most famous tattooist abroad is Horiyoshi Sandaime, who is based in Yokohama and has a tattoo museum, and he has many foreign apprentices, and you can actually find in YouTube, if you get in Japanese tattoo or something, you find many clips and many young tattooists who are introduced or interviewed. So please, if you're interested in it, go and just explore it. And well, I think I'm at the end of my lecture. As I said, I think tattooing, particularly in Japan, is a very high classy form of art, and it should be perceived as such. And if the Japanese would be more knowledgeable about the history of tattoos, if they would look at tattoos as pictorial art and not as a defilement on the human body, their way to view it would change. And yes, I hope that the discussion that is going on now, and even there are books coming out. There were not many books around when I started to research tattoos in Japan, but there are young anthropologists and even art historians who publish books about tattoos, and maybe this may change how tattoos are viewed in Japan, and the restrictions that are out for people who have a tattoo may also get more lenient. We will see. Yeah. Okay.